All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Great show ahead for you guys. We're going to do the Stratfor emails in a second. I'll tell you what that is. It's an amazing collection of emails that show us what the power establishment in this country actually thinks of Republicans, of us, of the rules, etc., and who actually runs the world. And so we'll do that in a minute. But later, Mitt Romney comes up with a new word, Obama-lony. Oh. Okay, but he dishes some baloney of his own. Okay, and is his latest line of attack racist? We'll talk about that as well. And then later in the program, complete corruption of our system. Amazing stats about that. So, it's a typical Young Turks show. Let's get started. Before I do anything else, speaking of typical Young Turks show, go ahead, you tell me what I told you. Report out now, Shep Smith on thin ice on Fox News. Now, did I or did I not tell you that, guys? And you know why he's on thin ice? Because he's supporting gay marriage too much. He's calling the Fox News audience too intolerant. He just mentioned it once in a passing break. I showed it on the show here, and I said, look, I know Shep oftentimes disagrees with Republicans on Fox News and against the conservative talking points, and they give him a lot of leeway, but there are bounds of reason to this. And if you hint at the Fox News audience being intolerant, that's going to cross the line. Bam! Cross the line. And sources saying Roger might have to pull him aside and give him a good talking to and say, hey, getting a little too hot in there, okay? Dial it down. And the source says if he wasn't so popular and highly rated and highly paid, Roger would have yanked him off the air months ago. It's almost as if I know what I'm doing. All right, so now we move forward. Speaking of which, right? So Stratfor is a company that is a private corporation, and what they do is they collect intelligence for other corporations from the government. So they have a lot of sources, especially within the Republican Party, also within the donor community, so they have a better sense of what's going to happen next than your average guy. And in fact, they try to oftentimes even spy in on protesters. For example, in Bhopal, when Dow Chemical had that disaster in India, they spied on the protesters there. So this is a pretty nefarious group. Julian Assange has characterized them as a shadow CIA. And when you have private business and government merging, that is not a good form of government. And Stratfor appears to be at the very epicenter of that. Now, we have some internal emails from them. How do we get them? Anonymous hacked into it. WikiLeaks got it from Anonymous or got it somehow. And then they gave it over to Political Gates, who is now reporting it. And I love it because it gives you a great sense of what's actually happening in our political scene behind the scenes, the stuff that the media doesn't tell you, but that is enormously relevant. So, now, Stratfor, as I said, is run by two guys, George Friedman and Fred Burton. Fred Burton's the VP, George Friedman is the CEO, and they collect intelligence, and they've got their sources within the Republican Party. And first, this is how they characterize the different Republicans back in December of 2010. They say, this is seen in the battle between Romney, corporate, Palin, I like how they misspelled it, Tea Party, and Huckabee, Christian. And you know what? That's a very fair assessment of what the Republican field looked like back then in 2010. Now, Huckabee, I thought, should have gotten in. Apparently, they thought he had a legitimate chance to grab the Christian voters, but he chose not to. And, of course, Palin chose not to as well. But who is Mitt Romney? He is clearly the corporate candidate that is mentioned in many different emails. So, of course, they like that part, but there are other parts about Mitt Romney that they do not like. So here's one of their sources saying all the way back in 2008, after he got his ass kicked in Michigan by John McCain during that primary season, he says, Americans don't like losers. The Michigan move will hurt because of perceptions. So then McCain might not pick him. Although later in the emails, they seem to have a source that says until 4 days before Sarah Palin was announced, that Mitt Romney was the #1 candidate for VP for John McCain. But something happened in those 4 days, and they went with Sarah Palin instead. Interesting. But here is some of their concerns about Romney. According to a Republican source in 2009, Romney can't make it. Mormons are viewed as voodoo. Now, I like how the Republicans are like, God, I like how he's corporate, but the Mormon, oh, come on. We got to discriminate. We're torn. He'll do everything we want as a corporate paymaster and then now servant as a politician. But, you know, he is Mormon. In fact, they're obsessed with it. Here's Fred Burton, the VP, in May of 2011. Romney thinks he can win. Mormon, no way. Now, the funny thing is, he, of course, turned out to be wrong in terms of the primaries. And then, if that wasn't clear enough, here's a Stratfor email from 2008. Ew, Romney, gross. It's funny when you see, like, the so-called masters of the universe are actually, you know, in 8th grade. They're like, oh my God, did you see Romney? He's so voodoo with all his Mormon stuff. Ew. Okay. Now, here's another thing that's interesting. Back in all the way in 2007, remember Romney at that point is trying to run against McCain, etc. They have a source that says, this is from the GOP billionaire fundraiser. Does not believe a Mormon can get elected. Now, that could be Sheldon Adelson, who poured in a tremendous amount of money, of course, to Newt Gingrich, because part of the reason was he said he thought Mitt Romney couldn't get elected. And the other reason is, to be fair to Mitt Romney, he thought that Newt Gingrich would do whatever he wanted, but Mitt Romney might not. Score one for Romney, right? Now, it could be the Koch brothers, it could be any of them, but it's interesting to see the biases internally when the Republicans are just talking to themselves and talking to these corporate groups and fundraisers and funders as well. Now, speaking of which, this is enormously telling. So what do they think of you? What does the Republican corporate establishment think of the Tea Party guys, etc.? Well, here's an email from 6/9/2011, Fred Burton again. Romney and Palin want the job, but neither are winnable. Again, with the obsession with Mormon. Mormon and Walmart night shift aisle stalker, but she can carry the white trash and redneck vote. I like how he misspells redneck. Ironic. But that's what they think of you. Like, they think you're a sucker, you know, if you're a Tea Party guy. Like, oh, yeah, come on, vote for our tax cuts. Redneck aisle stacker, yeah. You don't have a banking job like us. You don't have a corporate job. You stack us at Walmart. Trash. And then they use you to win elections and then get deregulation and tax cuts and all the things that they want. Crony capitalism. Well, how about black folks? Well, here's a very telling email from June of 2011 about Herman Cain. They say, Cain is like to trump the Dems on the race card. Again, horrible grammar. I know these are just emails they're sending to one another, often misspellings, but what they're saying there is, we can trump the Dems with Herman Cain. We bring out a black guy to say the racist things, and they can't say anything. Those are what we suspected what the strategy was. It turns out that is what the strategy was. So what's the ultimate objective? Well, Fred Burton explains in 2010 in an email. He says, the thousands of IRS agents funded in the health care bill are part of the master plan to go after looking to hide their money offshore, etc. Guys like me. In other words, we don't want that. We don't want any government enforcement. We don't want the IRS looking into the money we're hiding because guys like me are hiding it. Now, if we just get Republicans elected, well, man, we'll be safe, and they will serve their corporate masters and the rich just like we want them to. Send that white trash Sarah Palin out there. Send that sellout Herman Cain out there. Do whatever you got to do, even if it's a voodoo Mormon guy, as long as he's corporate enough. Now, unfortunately, they did collect the right intelligence on President Obama. Look at this email from 2009. Quote, Obama's strategy is to get through as much as he can during the first 2 years, then concede everything the last two in an effort to get reelected. Well, that one hurts, because that's almost exactly what happened. Except for the fact that in the first 2 years, I don't think his agenda was that tough either. But just like they said, he conceded everything in the last 2 years. They continue. However, many of the big money Dems feel he has been a disaster and won't support his next go-around. And guess what? Right now, in the news, President Obama's team complaining about how they can't raise enough money, and a lot of the big-time Democratic supporters have left. Well, you should have seen that coming. Stratfor saw it coming 3 years ago. Now, they don't always get it right, whether it's Stratfor or the sources that they're talking to. For example, McCain. back in '07, boy, did he mangle the prediction on the Democratic side. McCain told source that he now thinks Hillary will secure the nomination. Oops. Although he remains convinced Edwards is a better pick. Oops, oops, oops. Okay, God, that's a disaster. And then here is another bold prediction by a source. We need a sharp young governor. I also like Michelle Bachmann. Yeah, that one didn't work out either. And then here comes Fred Burton again. Oh, no, not again. Here we go. My money's on Huntsman. Closet Mormon. I've never seen anyone so obsessed with people who are more Mormon than Fred Burton is. Anyway, he picked John Huntsman to win. Man, if you're paying a guy to collect intelligence for you, dicey. So they're not always right. They're not omnipotent. They don't run the world. They don't always get things right. But you know what? They are absolutely connected to both the corporate environment and culture, and specifically the companies, the donors, and the Republican Party officials. And so this is their view. Now, here comes the last one that's really interesting. They write in May of 2011, the New York tribe money and the 12 who run the world want Petraeus to run. And are you ready for this? Yesterday, headline on Drudge Report, Romney might pick David Petraeus to be VP. Now, Drudge often gets it wrong. It doesn't mean they're going to pick Petraeus, and it doesn't mean that these guys are right. But it is a fascinating email. You know, it's unclear what they're referring to when they talk about the New York tribe. You know, it's probably a fair guess, since they talk in the emails constantly about Republican Jewish donors, that they might be referring to that, because sometimes Jewish people refer to themselves as the tribe, right? And by the way, this is not anti-Semitic, because the guy running the Stratfor is Jewish himself, right? So then it's not some sort of Council of Zion conspiracy, etc. It's just probably an offhanded way that they referred to people that they knew, right? Now, the 12 who run the world, that I have no idea who it is. And I'm not convinced that they run the world, but apparently among these circles, there's a belief that there are 12 people who run the world. Who are they? I don't know. I'll tell you what, if they pick Petraeus as VP, I'm going to start to get a little scared. So it's a fascinating look into how they run things behind the scenes and what they actually think of you.